Welcome to ReadingBear. Today we've got a wild story where OP buys their first home, only to find out their own parents secretly transferred it to their brother behind their back. I didn't grow up in a house where you were allowed to have boundaries. Family first was the rule, and family usually meant my parents doing whatever they wanted, my brother getting whatever he wanted, and me being told to be understanding. When I got older, I realized understanding was just a nice word for be quiet and pay for things. The house was my first real act of rebellion. Nothing fancy, small place, decent yard, garage, just big enough to pretend it could fit a second car if you breathed in. I bought it on my own after years of saving ugly lunches at my desk, taking extra shifts and side gigs, the whole thing. It wasn't a dream home. It was a first home. It smelled like paint and possibility. I ripped up carpet, learned which end of a pry bar did what, and found out how many trips to a hardware store one Saturday can hold. It was work, but it was mine. Every time I walked in, and the entry light clicked on, I got the same quiet rush. I did this. My parents never celebrated that. They acted like it was a family acquisition I happened to be holding for them. My brother, the golden child, 2 years younger, somehow always, between opportunities, would say stuff like, "When I settle down, I'll probably grab a place like this." My mom would correct him with a smile. "You mean this one?" It was a joke, sure, but it was also not a joke, which was the running theme of my childhood. Inevitable drama showed up the way drama does. In small pushes, my mom asked for copies of my utility bills, so we can help if you're ever short. I said no thanks. My dad suggested I put him as a backup contact with the mortgage servicer, in case of emergency. That one I actually considered until a coworker said, "Why does a grown adult need his dad on the phone with the bank?" I stopped considering. Then there was a storm. A bad one. The kind that makes trees do yoga they weren't designed for. A branch took out a chunk of my roof and water got into the attic. I filed a claim, scheduled an inspection, taped plastic where a person with skill would have done something more useful. My dad was on my porch by sunrise with a ladder and an opinion. He insisted on calling his guy, which turned into a flood of advice I didn't ask for. I let him patch what he could and thanked him, because life is easier when you pick the battles you actually want to win. After that, boundaries got murkier. My parents started treating the house like a group project. They let themselves in more. My mom brought curtains I didn't like and told me they brightened the place up. My dad stacked random lumber in my garage for future projects. My brother borrowed my mower and returned it empty. I tried the calm, adult, please ask first thing. They acted wounded. We did the emotional dance we always did, and I compromised more than they did, as usual. The transfer didn't happen after a big fight. It happened like a bad magic trick. One afternoon, my mortgage servicer called me. The woman on the phone used a tone I now recognize as weird legal thing. She said they received notice of a change in ownership for my property, that I'd conveyed title by gift to my brother. She was calling to confirm and to warn me that the due on sale clause might be triggered if it was a transfer without their consent. I didn't say anything for a second because my brain tripped over the words and face planted. Conveyed title by gift. My brother's name. Due on sale clause. I asked her to repeat it slower. She did, patient and careful. I said there had to be a mistake. She said the county recorder had a deed on file. She said to call them and get a certified copy. She said she'd put a note on my account. I hung up and felt that wrong buzz you get when you lose your wallet and realize your pockets are full of nothing. I drove to the recorder's office. The clerk handed me a paper copy of a gift deed, showing my property, my name as grantor, my brother as grantee, notarized and recorded. The signature that claimed to be mine barely looked like my name. The notary was someone I didn't know. The deed said I'd gifted my house for love and affection, which, if you know my family, is the funniest sentence that has ever been written. I took the deed out to my car and stared at it. Like maybe if I found the right line to read, it would reveal itself as a prank. It didn't. It was real ink and real paper and real fraud. I called my parents. My mom said she was driving and couldn't talk. My dad didn't answer. My brother picked up on the second ring and said, "Hey, you saw it. Good. About time." He sounded like a guy confirming a package had arrived. I asked what he meant. He said I didn't need the stress of a house, and he did. He said Mom and Dad agreed it was best. He said we're family and family shares. He said I could crash on their couch while I figured out my next step. He said I should stop paying anything on the place because it wasn't my problem now. There it was. The demand. "Hand over your keys," he added. Stop paying the mortgage and the taxes and all that. We'll handle it. The old me would have argued. The old me would have yelled about theft and grown-up choices and paper trails. The old me would have tried to appeal to decency in people who had shown me repeatedly they didn't respect that word. But the old me had been slowly dying since the day I turned on that entry light and felt that private rush. The new me looked at the counterfeit version of my signature and realized I was being given something rare, an order so ridiculous and entitled that complying with it to the letter would bring the whole thing down. I decided in that moment I was going to play their game, but by the rules they wrote. I started with evidence. I drove back inside, took photos of the deed and my ID and my actual signature. I requested a certified copy of the recorded deed and the notary's journal entry for that day. I went to the bank and got copies of checks I'd written for the down payment and every mortgage payment. I printed emails with my lender, the appraisal, the inspection report. I texted my brother and asked him to put everything he wanted in writing for clarity. He obliged because arrogance makes people helpful. The texts were gold. Him telling me to stop paying, him calling himself the owner, him telling me to vacate voluntarily to avoid drama. My parents chimed in on the family group chat with the same energy. My mom said the house belongs to your brother now and that family cannot sue family. My dad told me to cooperate. I said understood and will do and saved every word to the cloud. Then I complied. I canceled my mortgage auto pay. I called the lender, told them there was a disputed transfer and that the purported new owner had instructed me to stop paying. They said they couldn't give legal advice but noted the account and said any delinquency would be reported. I stopped paying property taxes and, like a good little rule follower, I updated the tax office with the owner on record mailing address, my brother's place. I called the insurance company and told them, very politely, that I had been informed in writing that I was no longer the owner and that the new owner had taken over. They told me to confirm in writing. I did. I canceled utilities in my name on the date my brother demanded the keys. For the electric and water, I filled out the online forms listing the owner on the deed as the person to contact for future service. I moved my things into a storage unit on a month-to-month basis and crashed at a friend's spare room. I left the house clean. I left the keys on the kitchen counter, took a photo with the day's paper visible next to them, locked the door, and mailed a set to my brother with a delivery confirmation slip. Then I put a second set in an envelope addressed to myself and kept it sealed. I wrote on the front, returned at the new owner's demand. I didn't want any claim later that I'd withheld anything. I took one more step. I hired a real estate litigator, not a friend of a friend, not a bargain bin lawyer, a shark. I brought a thumb drive with everything I'd collected. He flipped through, asked a few questions, and grinned in a way you don't often see from lawyers unless the puzzle in front of them has a pleasing number of corners. He explained the plan in clear language. File a complaint to quiet title and for declaratory judgment that the deed was void due to forgery and fraud. Ask for a temporary restraining order so they couldn't sell or transfer. Record a list pendant so no one would touch the title. Subpoena the notary and the recorder's full file. Demand all communications between my parents, my brother, and anyone who touched the paper. He said we'd also notify the lender formally. He said the due on sale clause would probably get triggered by the transfer anyway, which would create pressure on them because lenders really hate unauthorized gifts. As we prepped the filing, my parents escalated. They sent a notice on printer paper with all caps words about unlawful detainer, even though I'd already left. They told the neighbors I had finally done the right thing. My brother posted a photo inside my living room to social media with some caption about blessings. I screenshotted that too. Then the machine of consequences started up, slowly at first. The lender mailed a notice of acceleration in the event of transfer without consent. It explained the due on sale clause in simple terms and said the loan could be called due immediately. My brother texted me in a panic that I'd complicated the mortgage. I replied that as a non-owner, I couldn't complicate anything. He said to fix it. I said, per your instruction, I'm not involved. Malicious compliance is delicious when you do it calmly. Utility sent notices about service termination unless new service was started in the owner's name. I forwarded those to my brother. Property tax bills went to his address and came back to me with, "What is this?" I sent him a screenshot of his own text. Stop paying the taxes. Then code enforcement showed up. I wasn't there, but a neighbor sent me a message that someone from the city had put a bright sticker on the garage about the piles of lumber my dad left and the tarp on the roof not being an approved repair. The new owner needed to address it or face fines. Brother texted me, "Handle this now." I replied with a single sentence. "You told me to stop paying or handling anything because it's yours." He blew up my phone with all caps threats. I told him to keep everything in writing because a judge would want precise documentation. That slowed him down. We got our court date for the temporary restraining order fast. My lawyer walked the judge through the fake signature, the notary log, which we already had by then, and the texts. The notary logs were the cherry on top. The person who signed used an ID number that wasn't mine, a physical description that didn't match me, and a signature that looked like someone else's name. The notary also had a habit of notarizing for the same small circle of people. The judge issued the restraining order and scheduled the full hearing. The lis pendens hit the record like a stop sign. If you've never been sued or sued someone, here's a quick tip. Discovery is where the truth crawls out. We asked for everything. They stalled, then produced a packet that made my lawyer raise an eyebrow. The deed had been prepared by a document service that specialized in family transfers. The emails from my mom to that service were pure entitlement, like she was ordering curtains. She said I wanted to gift the house to my brother. She even described my signature style, like that was a thing you can do over email. My dad talked about how young people don't understand responsibility. My brother bragged in a group chat to his friends that he'd finally gotten the house. He joked about charging me rent. That one, when my lawyer printed it out, got a quiet whistle. The notary was the last piece. We deposed them, and it turned out the notary never saw me. They saw a person who said they were me. The ID used was borrowed, meaning stolen. The notary admitted they didn't actually compare the signature to anything. They were casual about it, like this was a coffee run, and my lawyer's smile got thinner with each answer. We filed a complaint with the State Notary Commission while we were at it. Meanwhile, my brother learned what due on sale meant. The lender, now aware of the transfer and the dispute, sent a formal letter saying the entire loan balance might be accelerated unless the title issue was resolved. They copied my brother. He freaked out to my parents, who called me using the "we are the victims" tone that had been forged in the fires of many holidays. My mom said I had caused a crisis and needed to resume payments so the bank wouldn't be upset. My dad said, "Be reasonable." I said I was being perfectly reasonable and following the instructions I'd been given. I said I was not the owner per their texts, so I couldn't legally pay for property I didn't own. It was honestly kind of relaxing to use their words against them like a mirror. Then came the hearing. I wore a plain suit I'd bought for weddings. My parents came dressed like they were attending a church service. My brother wore an outfit he thought made him look like a real estate guy. The judge was efficient and uninterested in our family dynamics. The judge wanted facts and law, not feelings. My lawyer laid it all out. Chain of title from when I purchased, the fraudulent gift deed, the notary irregularities, the due on sale letter, the texts where they ordered me to stop paying and vacate because it was theirs, and my compliance. He kept his voice level and his points numbered. When it was the other side's turn, their lawyer tried to spin it as a misunderstanding. They said I had expressed a desire to simplify life and entrusted the home to my brother temporarily. They said we were a tight-knit family and this was a paperwork issue. The judge looked at the notary journal and then at my signature on my license, and then at the deed signature and back at the journal. The judge didn't look charmed. The judge asked my brother one direct question. "Did Op sign this deed?" My brother tried to dance around it. The judge repeated the question. My brother said something like, "In spirit." The judge stopped him and explained how signatures work. Then the judge asked me, "Why did you stop paying the mortgage and the taxes?" I said I was ordered to, in writing, by the people claiming to be the owners. I said I complied, so there would be no confusion and no allegation that I was interfering with their property. I said I didn't want to commit the crime of paying bills on a house that, according to the deed they filed, wasn't mine. There was a tiny noise from my lawyer that might have been a restrained laugh. The judge ruled in a way that felt like somebody finally turned the world right side up. The deed was void. It was void not because of a technicality, but because of fraud and forgery. The court ordered the recorder to strike it and restore title to me. The judge granted my request for attorney's fees and costs. The judge admonished the notary by name and referred the matter to the commission. The judge also granted a permanent injunction prohibiting my parents and my brother from attempting further transfers without my explicit notarized consent. The judge said something I had never heard an authority figure say to my parents: "You do not have the right." The world went quiet for a second. My mom put a hand on her chest like she might be the first person in history to have a heartbeat. My dad stared at his shoes. My brother looked like someone took away his dessert. Outside the courtroom, they tried the old script. My mom said we shouldn't let a judge tear apart a family. My dad said I should think long term. My brother said a few choice words I won't repeat. I told them the long term started now. I told them I'd be sending them the bill when the court calculated fees. I told them any future contact needed to be through my lawyer unless it was an apology. Then I left before I could be baited into relitigating my childhood. It didn't end instantly because reality doesn't end instantly. The recorder took a bit to process the order and clean up the record. The lender backed off the acceleration after my lawyer sent them the judgment and proof the fraudulent deed was gone. I reinstated my insurance and utilities and moved back in. I walked through each room touching things like you do after a break-in. Even though nothing of mine had been taken except a sense of safety, I put my stuff back in places it had been. I threw out the curtains my mom had insisted on because sometimes healing is petty. I got a certified copy of the judgment and put it in a folder with tabs. I also put a fraud alert on my credit, just in case. I installed a camera at the front door, not because I wanted to catch anyone, but because I wanted the small peace of knowing who knocked. I changed my locks, not because I thought my parents had keys, but because I never wanted to worry about whether they did. Then came the money. The court awarded me attorney's fees, and my lawyer doesn't bill like a volunteer. The number wasn't small. My parents tried to argue they couldn't pay it. The judge set a schedule. When they missed the first payment, my lawyer started the process to garnish. I don't enjoy that sentence, but I enjoy living in a world where actions have costs. They eventually paid, grumbling through their lawyer that I was ruining them. I said nothing. I didn't have to. The notary lost their commission. I didn't dance on that, but I did file the paperwork. If you make money by stamping things, maybe check the ID. My brother tried one last stunt. He claimed he'd made improvements while he owned the house and deserved to be reimbursed. He sent a spreadsheet with things like new TV, fridge, better, and personal labor. My lawyer sent back a letter explaining the difference between improvements and shopping. That was the last I heard of it. The weirdest part was the quiet after. My phone stopped showing family group chat notifications because I muted the chat and then I left it entirely. Holidays looked different. I spent them with friends who liked me for me, not because I could be pressed into service as a wallet. I felt guilty sometimes because childhood programming is a sticky glue. I talked to a counselor and learned how to sit with that guilt without letting it run me like a remote-controlled car. I learned new phrases like, "That doesn't work for me," and "no." They felt strange, and then they didn't. The house felt different too. It wasn't just a building I'd bought. It was a place I'd defended. The paint on the doorframe I'd scuffed moving a couch felt like a badge. The garage, with my dad's abandoned lumber gone, looked like a promise. I put in actual insulation in the attic where his tarp had been and hired a real roofer to fix what should have been fixed the first time. It cost money, and none of it hurt the way writing checks used to hurt because it was a decision I made, not a demand I obeyed. People on here always ask, "Why didn't you cut them off earlier?" The honest answer is, I didn't know how. I believed family meant letting people take from you if they said it was love. I thought reasonable meant do what they want, so they'll be nice to you. I thought boundaries were rude. Then my parents and my brother took my house on paper and told me to stop paying for it. And I followed that instruction to the letter. And the structure they'd built where I did the work and they took the credit collapsed under its own weight. There's a part I still think about. When my brother told me to stop paying and hand over the keys, I could have dug in and refused. That would have turned into an ugly standoff, maybe with cops standing on my porch while my parents cried and neighbors watched. Instead, I listened. I did exactly what he said. I removed myself, canceled my payments, and put the ball where he insisted it belonged. The lender did what lenders do. The city did what the city does. The court did what courts do. All I had to do was keep a paper trail and wait. That's the thing people misunderstand about malicious compliance. It isn't about being petty for the sake of it. It's about stepping aside and letting the consequences designed into systems finally run. People who are used to dodging those consequences hate it. They call it betrayal. They call it cold. What it really is fairness in motion. Now, when I step into my entryway and the light clicks on, I still get the quiet rush. It's deeper now because it has a layer of relief under it. It reminds me that I did something hard and adult and boring. Kept records, hired a lawyer, sat in a courtroom, paid bills, said no. It reminds me that I am not an extension of my parents' wants or a shelf for my brother's needs. I am a person who buys a house, fixes a roof, and locks the door when I go to bed at night. There are small echoes of the old life. A cousin texted to ask why I'm making it so awkward by not attending a family barbecue. I replied with the short version. My parents stole my house on paper. I sued. I won. I'm not pretending that didn't happen for potato salad. He sent back a thumbs up and didn't bring it up again. I saw a neighbor I like at the grocery store who said my mom told her I was taking a break from family. I said that was one way to put it. She nodded in the way people nod when they've been trapped by the same stories their whole lives. If you find yourself here, reading this, because a parent or sibling is trying to move the goalposts on your life and calling it love, here's my advice as some person on the internet. Write things down. Get copies. Use email. Ask for instructions. In writing. Stop paying for what you're told isn't yours. Hire people who do this for a living. Play the part they assigned you to the letter, but keep every receipt. If your family's power rests on your confusion, clarity is the crowbar that opens the door. I still have the envelope with the keys I mailed myself. It sits in my file cabinet, unopened, with that note across the front in my handwriting. Returned at the new owner's demand. Sometimes I pull the cabinet open and look at it like you'd look at a trophy. Not because it was clever, honestly. Anyone could have thought of it, but because it reminds me I'm allowed to be literal when someone is being ridiculous. It reminds me that you can't be blamed for following the rules they insisted on, especially when those rules only ever worked because you were too polite to test them. The last loose end was the roof. The real roofer did it right. He gave me a clear estimate, fixed the rot, replaced the flashing, and left no mess. The first night after it was done, it rained. I lay in bed listening for leaks that didn't come and thought about the day my dad showed up with a ladder and a lecture. There was no anger left, just information. Some people will help in ways that cost you more later. Some people will help because they are helpful. You learn the difference the way you learn everything that matters, by paying attention and keeping your own name on your own deeds. I didn't sell the house. Everyone asked if I would, like the place was now poisoned. But keeping it wasn't about spite. It was about the promise I'd made to myself when I was eating cold noodles at my desk and transferring another bit of money into savings, that I would have a front door I could lock and a space where I didn't have to pretend. The house still does that for me. It reminds me every day that family first is a phrase that only means something if the people saying it understand what family is. It isn't theft with a smile. It isn't a shout in your ear about what you owe. It isn't keys demanded, payments canceled, and then panic when the system reacts. Family is respect. Family is asking, not taking. Family is hearing no and still loving the person who said it. So yeah, my parents secretly transferred my house to my brother. I took it back in court. I did it by doing exactly what they told me to do and exactly what the law allows. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I went to the recorder's office, the lawyer's office, and then the courtroom. I obeyed their ridiculous order to the letter, and then I watched as the paper they faked got shredded by a judge who didn't care about our family myths. And when I came home, for real this time, I stood in the entryway and flipped that light switch on, and it felt like the first time again, only better. Because this time, I wasn't just turning on a light. I was turning off the old script. I was choosing the quiet. I was choosing me. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you again tomorrow.